everyone. Welcome to our event today. And today's webinar is entitled Improve Your Workplace in 30 Days with RPA. And my name is Teresa Resick, and I'm the Vice President of Market Intelligence here at AIM. And AIM is your host and producer of our event today. And IBM is the underwriter of today's webinar, and I thank them very much for their support, and also with their partner Salient Process, who's joining us, but more about them in just a moment. But certainly thank you for taking the time to join us. I value the time that you give us for these events. Typical housekeeping stuff, just as we get started, go through this really quickly. I encourage you to open the chat, tell us hello, let us know where you're listening from, and feel free to use either chat or Q&A throughout our time today. Ask questions of our presenters. There's a lot of really good information that we're going to be sharing, so please ask questions as we go along. But open up the chat feature and feel free to go in and say hello right now. Also, later in the webcast, I would appreciate it if you would take a feedback survey. I always value your opinion and want to know what you think about what we're discussing today. And also if you have any suggestions for future topics that you'd like for us to cover. And this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted to aim.org's resources learning page in just a few days. And in addition, also want to mention that in the chat feature, there's a link that we're going to put in here now. I'll put it in there a couple of times throughout our time today. It's a link to some resources, really cool information that the folks from IBM and Salient have shared. And also there's a link in there for some good resources from AIM. We're just here to help you learn more and help you figure things out. And so check out the resources and feel free to also ask questions about anything that might be in there. Okay. And just want to introduce our co-host team that we have with us today. From the AIM side of things, we have Kevin Crane, and Kevin is AIM's content strategist, and he authors ebooks and infographics on a wide variety of intelligent information management and digital transformation topics. He's also the producer and host of AIM on Air podcast, and that podcast was recently named to Forrester's 100 Best Channel Podcasts of 2021. And our other co-host is David Janess, and David is the manager of events and communities at IBM. And I have the pleasure of working with David a number of times throughout the year, and always enjoy the perspective that he brings to our events. And I mentioned that we have some folks from Salient Process joining us today. And Salient is a privately held company with highly skilled resources to help you achieve your business goals. We're learning a little bit more in a little bit about what all that means. But the folks from the executive team of Salient who are here today, we have Eric Ducos, who is their CTO, John Stang, who is the VP of Sales and Marketing, and Pooja Jain is AI Technical Director at Salient Process. I'm very pleased to have this esteemed team with us all. So right now, I'm going to turn things over to Kevin Crane to just set the stage a lot better than I have about what we're going to be talking about today. Kevin?
Hi, Teresa. Well, thank you. It's great to be here again for another really important, I think, AIM webinar. And listen, it's no secret that the way we do business is changing, and now more than ever, organizations must have strategies in place to quickly identify and fix inefficiencies and roadblocks that lead to inefficiency in process, but also customer dissatisfaction and workplace dissatisfaction, adopting new ways of working that not only bring about these savings, but work to improve those factors, as well as the overall performance of the organization. And more that means turning to robotic process automation, often powered by artificial intelligence. But our research here tells us that many organizations, in fact, most, can struggle to understand how to use RPA and AI in ways that really make a difference. And that's what we're going to explore today. And we'll get a glimpse at the impetus of what I believe is really some important innovation spurred forward by IBM. Earlier this year, the folks at IBM conducted a Build-A-Bot challenge, offering two $10,000 cash prizes to anyone who could build an RPA application that makes a difference. And the challenge was open to anyone who was not with IBM. Over 200 teams participated from all over the world. And today we're going to feature one of those solutions and go deep with, as you mentioned, Teresa, our guest host today, David Jeunesse from IBM. He is here with one of those teams to talk about the Build a Bot Challenge and the bot developed by Salient Process. It's an end-to-end workflow application using RPA and AI that, get this, that determines customer sentiment from email and then automates the response using AI. Now that's exciting to me. So welcome, David. Can't wait to hear more. Please tell us more. First of all, what inspired IBM to sponsor the Build a Bot Challenge, and why is this application from Salient Process so exciting?
Well, thank you, Kevin. Marvelous to be here. And I will share my screen because I do have a couple of charts. I'm very happy to do so. Oh yeah, let's take a look at my my Slack channel. You have got the essence of what's exciting about here is there's so many different new moving pieces that we really wanted to share it with the AIM audience. But you asked me to set the stage for, what is it that led to this Build a Bot contest and what came out of it. So here's our agenda. I want to give a little bit of an update on what it was, and then we're going to go to Pooja, who really was the driving force here, and Eric, who are on the team. It's a team of 4 folks, and we'll name everybody so everybody feels acknowledged. But we've got Pooja and Eric today to really take us through how they built it, what kind of things they learned along the way, so that you can take away what it's like to work on an RPA project and build something that can really move the needle, as they say. So, and then we'll hear from John about what is Salient Process and how do you guys work. So we'll get the whole story. So what I wanted to start with is so that everybody in the audience understands that IBM has a strategy for automation, which includes intelligent information management. Within its definition of automation. What we have brought to the market is a platform, and the platform has some legacy products that were acquired by IBM, including DataCap, where I came from, including FileNet, including iLog, including Lombardi. So a lot of folks have those products, but what IBM did was not only continue to modernize and update and improve and enhance based on a lot of customer input, but to add pieces and to connect them and to integrate them. So that now you can build an end-to-end application, which is what we're going to see today, that uses many of these pieces. So for example, today you're going to see RPA working with decision management, business rules, and triggering workflows, which may involve human beings, it may not involve human beings, but to actually put in action some strategies to make customers happier. So let's take a look at it. The next piece that you should understand is that we were working with several of the RPA vendors over the last few years, but IBM really wanted to have its own vendor, and we acquired WDG Automation a little bit more than a year ago, a Brazilian company that it had AI built in, it had a chatbot that came with it, had all the kind of cool pieces that we were looking for, and so it was a nice fit, and it is now part of that platform. Now, you've heard RPA, you've heard Robotic Process Automation. Let's talk about what is that. And this is how AIM defines it, and I think it's pretty close to what it is. It's simply a way of automating human activities on a computer. So if, for example, you're going to see the recorder. If I were to type in my name and a password to go into a particular a business system, well, I could record that, and a robot could then do it after that. And I don't have to, do the tedious work. Well, multiply that times many times, cutting and pasting, all these sort of simple, very tedious, repetitive tasks you can have the computer do for you. And you don't need APIs, and it becomes a really good, as we'll see today, a way to orchestrate and connect different components to build an application. So one of the things about WDG automation, now known as IBM Robotic Process Automation, is this low code aspect, this idea of an easy way to start to build applications. And that got us thinking here at IBM about, well, how could we let people know about this and actually invite them to try it? And there is a free trial, a 30-day free trial, in which you can certainly try it even now, all the way through the rest of the year. As I understand it, this 30-day free trial exists, and you could download it and try it. And so we said, well, let's make a contest, and let's invite people. And as Kevin said, you couldn't be an IBMer or live with an IBMer, but anybody else it was open to. Didn't have to be a customer. In fact, we had a lot of students try it out, which was interesting. We had a lot of business partners like Salient Process, and a few customers, and as I say, students, and some folks who just said, well, I'm not working now, so I want to do this. Anyway, you had to use IBM RPA, but other than that, you could be as creative as you wanted. We had two categories. So one, to improve my workplace, and there was a $10,000 prize. And then we had best automation solution for a social challenge. Pretty interesting what came in. I'm going to show you the finalists with you, because I want you to understand some of the use cases that RPA can be used for. So one was simply to apply data to various data cleansing services. And the robot basically takes your data, applies it to the cleansing service, takes the results, maybe takes it to another one. So you end up with sort of double blind processes. One said, hey, your job is to source office supplies for the company, whatever, so there's an online comparison shopping robot for you. Of course, a lot of folks at business partners think about timesheets, because they're subject matter experts are clocking the time for their customers. And so there's a nice bot for that one. Expense reporting, that's something all companies have to deal with. Sometimes seems like an extra job, getting all that in. So let the robot do it. All of these were such good applications, but you kind of get a sense. The one in the middle on the bottom there, I really enjoyed. This was a team in Spain. So one of the things that you're working at a Forever 21 or some kind of a TJ Maxx, and your job is to keep the shelves filled. I got to have small, medium, and large. I got all of the right colors. That's a big, tedious manual process. They have a wonderful RPA solution that helps manage that and even trigger, ordering new ones when you get low on the shelf. Pretty cool. Jumping over to the social challenge, as you might imagine, we certainly saw a lot of COVID related type solutions, booking COVID vaccinations. Somebody came up with a cool idea for, and using AI again, for a vaccine passport, so that when you go to buy tickets to a show, tickets to an airplane or to a cruise, you've got this way to prove that you've been vaccinated. There's remote processing of driver's license, for example. I mean, social distancing, you don't want to go to the DMV if you can help it. So pretty cool stuff. And the winner was in the upper right there, where he came up with this really cool way to automate a food bank process to raise food using coupons. And the robot applies, if you take a survey from Dunkin' Donuts or whatever, you can get a free cup of coffee. We'll multiply that times many different vendors, many different coupons. And he creates a bank of coupons that people who need can go in and say, hey, this is what I want to feed my family tonight. They get the coupons and they go. It's really cool application. So sitting in my seat, watching these things come in, seeing how automation can actually really make a difference and be a good feeling thing was really fun to see. And that leads us to our team today.
Well, David, I just want to say real quick before we move in there, sorry to interrupt, but if folks are wondering how they can apply RPA in the real world, to what processes they might use it, or where the opportunities might be or how it might apply. You just spent only just a few minutes going through each of these examples. Each of these could be a shining example of how you can apply the technology. It's doable today in ways that really matter. So I think this is a fantastic thing to call out here, all of these different examples. And the question being, how would we apply these to our own places of business in similar ways and take advantage of what is doable and being done today?
Marvelous. And feel free to jump in and call out. I'm very comfortable with, Kevin and I went to different schools together, so that we're really on the same page. So I do enjoy that.
Sorry to interrupt. Please go ahead.
Well, here we go. We got to Salient, and I want to introduce Pooja Jain. They call it AIM International. I'm very happy to say that Pooja is joining us from India today. So Pooja, when we talked to the team, everybody said, oh, it was her idea. She drove this thing. And so I'm going to start with you, Pooja. I want to get to know you a little bit and understand kind of how this process unfolded. So you said, okay, we have this contest, we've got a deadline, we've got to get to it. How did you go about coming up with some ideas, and how did you pick the final one?
Hello, everyone. So when we got to know about the bot challenge, we decided to participate in it. But we got started a bit late because everyone at Salient was happily busy enough. So in the initial phase, we came up with certain ideas, the problems which can be addressed through RPA bot. And we brainstormed those ideas, including the social issues. And quickly we realized that we needed deep analysis to connect the dots and need meaningful domain knowledge. So alternatively, we decided why not to solve the more relevant problem to our business and customer, and which we already identified sometimes back a week before we started working for this solution. We realized that this is the issue. And that was to identify the customer, to identify the needs and opportunities from IBM Community Forum, which is the Salient's primary space. So generally, in any organization, there is a dedicated team to read the content from various sources and find out the sales, support, and other similar opportunities. And it's a painful process to monitor such emails and forums on daily basis, right? So let's say someone from the company received an email or forum comment from a customer who said something like that, hey, I want to buy XYZ product license. So that someone will connect with the sales team of that organization for this opportunity and share the desired content to fulfill the customer need. Now let's assume whatever we delayed or missed the opportunity to satisfy the customer needs. For example, it may be possible that we read the customer requirement and forget to answer it. That is a possibility. So that may make the customer unhappy if it remains unanswered for a long time. And it could be a business loss even. Moreover, we thought that how feasible for any organization to often check such forums to identify sales and support opportunities. So overall, finally, we decided to automate the task that someone does manually to reduce this pain. And then we finalized to build a more intelligent solution that monitors the customer requirement at regular intervals without missing any opportunities, and of course, smartly start the appropriate process. So that's the overall story behind the solution.
I love it. You were both the solution provider and you were the customer. And so why not? If you're gonna, and that's why we picked, one of the criteria was improve my workplace. So if somebody had to work at it, they'd have something actually to show for it, which you did. So your solution ultimately uses several components that we think of as automation in conjunction with Watson AI. So excuse me, you've got the RPA in here. You have
Mhm.
operational decision manager, which is our name for our business rule product, and you have workflow in here. And were there any other products, or is this basically the four that you wove together?
No, these are the main components.
Right. And we'll talk about what each one does in a minute when we look at your bigger diagram, that I think will give us a sense of it. But so what I certainly know our team really likes seeing that, hey, here's RPA using a number of different components. And so ultimately you have to say, what's our end state? What is our outcome that we want? And so was this clear to you at the time? Was this something that you wanted to achieve, or how did you get to these three things? We want to, we want to have a searchlight constantly looking for needs, and then we want to address those needs and focus on customer, desire. Was that from the beginning what you were trying to achieve?
Yeah, of course. These are the primary things which, when we were identifying and refining the ideas, we target those three primary things.
It's hard to argue with any of them.
Yeah.
All right, here's the diagram. Now, diagrams are funny. I think it helps if somebody talks through it. But basically, your application is represented in this picture. We're going to take a look in a second at some video of the robots in action, and you'll see the screens and all that. But to actually maybe step up 10 feet and look at the process itself, can you tell us what happens here and use this diagram as you need?
Sure. So this is the simplest pictorial representation of our solution design. And as you can see that IBM RPA is communicating with different modules, which is Watson, IBM Watson, the AI service of IBM, which is the natural language classifier. We specifically use that in our solution. Another one is the IBM ODM, which is a decision manager, and of course the next one is BAW process, which is a workflow process. So as a first step, what is happening here is our bot read the content from the email, which can be extended to the forum also. As of now, it's limited to email box only. And then after reading the content, bot sent that content to IBM Watson NLC service to identify the intent of that content. Now, what NLC will do, NLC will receive that input and provide the intent as the output. We have already trained the classifier model, and classifier takes that content as input and provides intent as output to bot again. Once bot receives that intent from NLC, it passes the information to IBM ODM to identify the relevant process information. We have designed some rules in ODM to take the decision based on the provided input. It took the intent as input and provided the information of a process that needed to be started in order to serve the customer need. So later, bot will take that response from ODM and start the BAW process. And later part, BAW will be taken care. BAW will take care of the what customer requires and what's need to be done, which teams needs to be targeted in order to fulfill the customer requirements.
Got it. So the AI, the Watson AI, helps actually read the emails and determines, oh, this is an unhappy customer. It has negative words, or it's tone, right? It can read that kind of thing, correct?
Not only the unhappy customers, but the customers who have certain requirements, like let's say sales requirements. If a customer say like, hey, I want to buy BAW license, then that customer is, that's the opportunity for us to serve the customer needs. That's the sales opportunity.
Right.
Of course, if any customer is unhappy, that's
picks that
also
up as-
considered.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to get into what the AI really does for us, and that's cool. And then the business rules that you say, okay, well, here's what's needed, and now we need some actions. And so in a way, the business rules help determine what the robot tells the workflow, right? You probably have several workflows, right? Get in touch with customers, sell them the license they want. Get in touch with customers, solve their support problem. Get in touch with, right?
Yeah.
Is it like that? There's several different pathways?
Yeah, that can be scalable. As of now, we just defined the two processes, one for the sales and one for the support. But that there could be endless processes in order to support the endless customer
Right.
needs.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so it's actually
Kevin,
simple. Go ahead.
if you don't mind, this is one of the reasons why we didn't just do a keyword search, for example, right? Is we wanted to use AI because sometimes what the customer wants is not so obvious. They might say, I need to have I am looking for ways, and this might be on the IBM community forum. I need to find some ways for my customers or my internet users to interact with workflow. That's just an example, right? Well, you're going to do a keyword search for that, and it's not going to be obvious, right? You need to have a little bit more than that. And then you can say, oh, you know what? We do have a solution for this, for example, right? And so we wanted the flexibility of Watson of AI and of NLP so that we could get a little bit deeper insight into what the customer really wants.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying that. And that's what I really want to get into for the AIM audience here, who is really, kind of learning how all of these pieces go together. So, all right, let's take a look at it. We've got a very short video of the solution, and I'm going to, let's see, what am I going to do? I'm going to drop out of the slides here and launch up my video. And so what we're going to look at the very beginning, I believe, is what the screen looks like for what, an admin person, somebody who's designing the solution. Is that what we're looking at here, Pooja?
Yeah.
And so it says reading email. So this is this the code for your application?
Yeah, so the first step is to read the content from the source, and here the
Right.
source is the email box.
Right. Cool. So I'm going to press play, and then what it does here,
The bot is reading the email content from the
email. Hello, I want to buy BAW. Got it. Okay. A bunch of things just happened. What just happened? The beauty of RPA is it happens in the background, so that we have to slow it down.
So these are the just variables defined in the bot script.
Okay, nice. So it's grabbed the body of the email.
Mhm.
And it's sending it to Watson.
Yep.
And Watson is classifying it. We see the results. Nice. And we get the results back. Now, if I remember correctly, it goes to ODM.
Right. And ODM responded that which process needs to be started for that particular content.
Nice. So it's really the traffic cop.
Yep.
And it's kicking off a workflow.
Yeah. So that shows that the desired process is started.
Okay, good. 30 seconds to go. I mean, that just looks like gobbledygook to me, but.
And this is the key here is that RPA handles all this stuff in the background so that you don't have to do it. RPA is the one that's going to go and say, I need to go I just got an email. I need to go get an email, or I need to go scrub the IBM community forum, right? Once I have that, I know I need to go and talk to Watson. And then what Watson gives me, I need to say, let me just get these couple of bits, which I know that decision manager wants, and then I'm going to feed it that information. And then once decision manager comes back, RPA says, well, I guess with this, we're going to go to workflow. And we need to talk a little bit more about what ODM really is used for, what each area is used for, really, and why we did that. But that's really kind of key there, is the fact that RPA is orchestrating the whole thing, right?
Word. Nice. All right. And
you're looking at the workflow here, yeah.
Yeah.
so these are different possible workflows.
It
So-
basically shows that a process was started in this case and what kind of process was started. If you are in support, it's going to have a process for support and pass some important information related to what the customer wants, right? If it's for sales, it might do the same thing, and it might say, looks like there's an opportunity that was classified for one of your toolkits that said in sales, or one of your services, right? And so forth.
Right. Cool. And this is available online. We can provide a link to take a look at the full piece. But so you're using RPA in different ways here. And this again is from your presentation. So the email retrieval and processing, you are obviously using a little OCR in there to extract stuff, right? And then, well, it says address extraction. So I assumed OCR, am I wrong?
We are using the read email command to read the email, and some NLP related command to extract the extract the email address.
Right.
A couple of other RPA commands we have used, like HTTP based to integrate different modules, and
Right.
for text processing.
Cool. So it's got a lot of capabilities, which is nice.
Yeah,
So-
but you almost sound too technical when you say things like this, David, because in a way, right, is we didn't have to ask ourselves questions like that. We said we need to retrieve an email, we've got a command for that. Okay, we need to go and talk to this system, we've got a command for that, right? And that's really kind of the level at which you operate when you offer these pieces of choreography. Yeah.
Nice. Well, let's stick, Eric, with you, because I wanted to now say, so Pooja's driving it. There's a great team that she's assembled, and I want to name everybody. So Pooja Jain, Himanshu Jain, Eric Ducos, and then a name DJ Desjardins, who I've never worked with, and so that was the team. And we enjoyed watching teams. So how did the team work together? How did you say, Pooja, great idea, let's help create what we're going to submit, Eric?
So firstly, we talked a lot about the different ideas. And as Pooja mentioned, we kind of realized fairly quickly that you can't really give a meaningful answer to a social or an environmental problem unless you have deeper expertise in that. With 1 month of runway, that wasn't going to happen, right? So that's why we kind of turned to something that we were more familiar with, where RPA really would make a difference. So one way that in my case that I got involved in this is I really just tried to act as the facilitator to help Pooja's team pull this together, which means that Pooja's team provided the expertise on the AI side, on the RPA side, and I also provided some sort of as a consultant, if you will, some insights on the workflow aspect of the solution, where DJ was focused on decision management, right? But essentially, it was really more. And why did we even do this? Right? Why would we choose all of these components? Someone might look at this and say, do you really need this aspect here? And one of the key things we were hoping to show in our solution was the fact that IBM RPA, and we talked about the fact that it took about a week and a half. I mean, I guess we haven't talked about this yet, right? But really the development effort was a week and a half. Is we really wanted to show that you want to bring together 3 big IBM pillars. It doesn't take long, right? You just need just some minor expertise. If we really kind of went into what kind of expertise I provided on the workflow side, what kind of expertise was provided on the ODM side, it wasn't really that much because not much was needed, right? And so my role was really that of making sure that Pooja and her team had the resources that they needed to pull this off and sort of bring together some sort of overall architectural perspective and say, we need this, we need this, we need that. Let me just put you in touch with the right resource.
Well, great to have that vision and that kind of support. So that's cool. Well, let's talk about the tool itself. Either Pooja or Eric, I mean, you've used the IBM RPA tool. Did it have all of the things you needed? What was your experience using it?
You want to start? Or would you comment on that?
Okay, so I want to add that IBM RPA is an excellent product. Compared to any other RPA tool, it has many commands that provide the flexibility to write the algorithm as required, that too without any third-party support. And moreover, I especially like the AI-related inbuilt commands in the IBM RPA. That were fantastic. And in terms of experience, we developed the bot voter, which converts the AA script to IBM RPA. So we had the expertise in IBM RPA. So that was advantageous for us for this hackathon.
Well, that's certainly good to have a little bit of running start. One interesting to me is the recorder. I mentioned it at the beginning because, again, I'm not technical. I'm really a marketing person. But the idea of I just do a few steps, but have the recorder on, now that creates some code that I can then go in and start to work with. Is that how you approached it, or did you use the recorder?
So I can speak to that perhaps. When you need to get emails, you don't need the recorder. When you need to extract customer comments, user comments from a forum feed, that's super helpful, right? And so in this case, you don't need to ask yourself, how is my page composed? How do I identify the various parts in the page that I'm interested in? Instead, you can use the recorder to sort of capture the pattern, if you will. To say in this area is where the stuff that I'm interested in is going to be, and essentially with that you can just cut your script development time. We call it a script, although you don't have to be typing code, but we call it a script because ultimately a script is just a bunch of commands that will drive you getting an email, that will drive you scrolling through an IBM community forum page, right? Or something like that. Or the script basically saying, I need to go and talk to Watson. I need to go and talk to workflow and so forth. Yeah. But to what Pooja was saying, I really found that compelling. We've been involved with IBM RPA from the start, even actually worked with the WDG team, which you mentioned at the beginning, to create that conversion tool that Pooja mentioned from AA to IBM RPA. But for us, one of the key advantages that we saw pretty much right away, having worked both with AA and IBM RPA, but that's also the case for others, is the fact that IBM RPA provides, I'm going to say, finer grained commands. What it means is you might like the convenience of one big thing that's going to say it's a big Swiss Army knife, and it's going to say you're going to, I'm going to go and access this system, do this kind of action and so forth. But what if it doesn't support it? Then you just have this big command that doesn't do more than what you needed to. The nice part with IBM RPA, which we actually did use that capability a lot, is the fact that because you've got smaller things, you can compose them in creative ways to solve problems instead of just dealing with one big thing that's going to say, I do this really well, but the rest of it, it might be more challenging, right? And so that was a real strength, which I really still feel is really one of IBM RPA's greatest advantages.
Cool. One of the things I see a lot in user groups or in communities and perhaps even on webinars like this is people saying, well, geez, I'd really like to do that, but what set of skills do I need to have access to be able to do this? And so in this case, it sounded like on the team, you had an ODM expert, you handle BAW, AI, and the RPA seems to be in Pooja and maybe Himanshu's wheelhouse. So what would you say to somebody who wants to get started like this, that the kind of skills they need to have in-house, or how they should go about, putting a team together?
I really think, firstly, we probably should have started with that first, is say that solving problems with RPA is not about technology, it's about a good story, right? You have to have something that's going to say, here's a compelling need. And that's really what you want to start with. And in some ways, as I mentioned, is we could get too technical for no good reason at all here, where you could just say, I just need to access email. I don't care about SMTP for sending stuff. I don't care about IMAP or POP3 or anything like that, right? You don't need to care about that. You just have these built-in commands that will do things for you. And that's one thing that obviously RPA as a space really tries to answer, is the fact that you don't need to be a developer and know all of these lower level details in order to compose something that's going to do what you want, right? On the one hand, I would say that IBM has an interesting mix in that you can basically compose your commands, and having been in both worlds, right, you could just do it drag and drop, yeah. And then you can click on things and say, for this command, I've got all these parameters and so forth. That's fine. But after a while, actually, so that's a good way to start, I guess, right? Is you could start at that level, but after a while, if you've used IBM RPA for a little while, you might say, can I just get typing, right? I'd like to be able to just, I know these commands, I've used them before. And one of the nice parts about IBM RPA is the fact that you can actually script it, and it will auto complete your commands and so on and so forth, right? So you don't have to work too hard about this. So you've got the benefit of, I'm kind of new to this, and I just sort of compose my commands visually, and then I've got it now. And you can jump back and forth between the two seamlessly.
Well said. I like that. Cool. Well, we've talked about the experience of using it. We've talked about your application, which is really cool. I'd like to get to know the Salient team a little bit, and the organization you work for. Obviously, they got behind and supported Pooja with her inspiration. John Stang, what can you tell us about Salient? How long have you guys been around? What are you all about?
Well, in fact, I'm glad you asked that, because the month after next, let's say November, it will be our 10th anniversary. And for the last 10 years, we're what I call a true blue IBM partner. And what that means to Salient is we only work with IBM solutions, and more specifically, we only work in the digital business automation space. And one reason we kind of hang our hat on that, David, is what that allows us to do is, over the last 10 years, we've comprised a team of technical experts that can really go deep into these solutions, right? So just as you were talking about BJ Desjardins, he came from a team that was called iLog, which is the rules engine that IBM purchased years ago. Our founder, Brian French, he came from Lombardi, which is the workflow platform that IBM purchased years ago. So our entire technical team has been in these solutions for years and years, even prior to IBM acquiring them. And so some of the things that allows us to do is what I've called out here is we have a dedicated innovation team. With that technical knowledge, we go in and we build some of our own applications that sit on top of IBM platforms to enhance what the IBM solutions are doing. And so that's, it really allows us to give a lot of different offerings to our clients and value add offerings that even enhance the IBM products themselves.
Well, now you're going to also know when customers are complaining.
That's true. Yeah. Hopefully we don't hit that button very often. But, and speaking of our RPA and really any of the technology, you had mentioned at the beginning of this about the platform, which is, we call the Cloud Pak for Automation. It's a platform, all these automation solutions, right? And what we see time and time again from clients is, we'll get on a sales call and, we'll call it a discovery call, and they'll say, we know that we have a need for automation. We don't know where to start and really what automation piece to use. So we developed this tool that we're looking at here called Automation Compass. And what that can do is if a client already has every need for automation, it's part of a process somewhere. So we always start with documenting that process. There's a tool, BlueWorks Live, that IBM has. It's fantastic for that. If a client doesn't have that, we can build a process out in this tool. But what this tool allows us to do is meet with those clients that know they have a need for automation, but don't necessarily know where to start. We can take their process, put it in the tool, click of a button. It'll read that process. The technical team on Eric's side has an algorithm they developed that can do that way above my head. But it'll read that process and it'll say, you need to use RPA for these steps. You need to use a rules engine for these steps. You need to use workflow for these steps. And then we can start digging into those different activities, explain to the client why they need that and why one piece of automation solution doesn't cover the gamut, right? That's why you need that platform that IBM's provided. But if it's just RPA, it allows us to find the areas across your processes that you really need to look at RPA. Then we can even take that one step further and go into an ROI scenario with them to be able to say, here's what your investment's going to be, and here's how long it's going to take to get your return.
Sweet. Well, we've got a URL here, which is actually quite intuitive. If the company's called Salient Process, then salientprocess.com is how we find you. So excellent, John. Thank you for giving us an overview. And my colleague, Kevin here, I know he's been monitoring some of the questions coming in, and I'll let him maybe ask them. But my last thought is I'd like to let the AIM audience know about the Community for Business Automation, which is the second one down here. A lot of our automation communities, some have to do with WebSphere, that middleware stuff. Some has to do with integration, and but the one we focus on, and the one that has a lot to do with what John and Salient Process do, is the business automation community. And so we'd love to have you there. Love to have you see what we're all about, and come in and add your voice, meet some colleagues, and learn some stuff. So with that, Kevin, you got some questions you want to give us from the audience or yourself?
I do, and I want to go back to something that that Eric said earlier. Eric mentioned that the development effort for this application was a week and a half. Is that right?
That is correct.
I
yes.
see Pooja shaking,
Yes.
nodding her head.
Oh, yes.
So let me get this straight. You did this in a week and a half. And so what that says to me, that excites me, is about the effort and the expense that goes into something like this. As an executive, I'm always going to ask, how much is this all going to cost me? Right. And I know I don't want to talk about product pricing and so forth, but especially for maybe a smaller business, how much is this going to cost me, and how quickly do I get an ROI out of something like this?
And that, given, I think, is one of the ongoing advantages of RPA, right? Is we could have built something like that, taking a little bit more time, obviously, and program the heck out of this, right? And use some integration and so forth, but we didn't have to. And because we didn't have to, it was a much faster cycle for us. Why did we take a week and a half? Because we started late and we just wanted to get done pretty quickly. Once again, it was one of the key points we wanted to show, right? Is the fact that I can cobble this thing together really quickly. I can access all of these different pillars that all behave rather differently, right? They're disparate. They're not really connected to each other, but with RPA they can be. And so for us, it was just a good way to show that fundamental concept of with RPA, you don't have to spend a lot of time on integration. Right?
Hence our title for our session today, Improve Your Processes in 30 Days. If indeed it is critical that you want to improve your process within 30 days, it sounds doable. I mean, this is doable and done today. But the effort that it is required. We had a question come in from Jeffrey during the presentation I want to get to. And the question is, how is IBM RPA different from tools like Microsoft Power Automate? Power Automate is hard to use if you're not good at coding. How easy is it to use IBM RPA? So you folks tell us.
Yeah, so Kevin, and maybe Pooja wants to comment on that. I don't want to be the one that keeps talking.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. I think I mentioned some of the benefits, Kevin, a little bit ago, is the fact that one of the key advantages is the fact that you can be, if you're sort of technical, right, you can work in the technical perspective, which is more of a scripting activity. Whereas if you're not familiar with the tool, and I feel like after a while, you might say, you know, I do want to get into the scripting part. I don't need to do the drag and drop things. It might make you feel cooler, I'm not sure. But ultimately is I love the fact that you can work with this perspective where you can just drag and drop those actions and basically configure them, right? So one of the key advantages of IBM RPA is that it sort of straddles both worlds. And you might say, well, it's never really comfortable to have your feet on both sides. But what I mean is, like, you can actually go fully on one side or the other. And one of the other advantages, which I mentioned also, is the fact that you've got a big palette of commands that do smaller things, you know, actions that do smaller things. That means that I have more possibility to combine them together in creative ways to solve my problems.
You mentioned that earlier, Eric, and here you are saying it again. So it sounds to me like you would advocate for a more not a piecemeal approach, that's not what I mean to say, but something that is more modular and more flexible in terms of its pieces and parts than one big monolithic sort of approach to the process. Is that about right?
I really think so. Having worked with either RPA engines or products, if you will, you often find yourself thinking, I wish I could do this, but there's no construct that I can do that, right? It would really make our lives so much easier. But that is one of the strengths of IBM RPA, is the fact that you've got these smaller, more basic commands that you can just bring together and combine in interesting ways to solve your problem.
Well, you know, folks, when we started this session today, I mentioned that often our AIM members tell us that they struggle to understand how to apply RPA, AI, some of these technologies in ways that move the needle, as David said. And I was pleased to see that there was some chatting going on that we're mentioning there. You know, we see plenty of use cases in the financial industry, back office manual processes, loan, deposit operations, insurance. So I want to ask the group, perhaps starting with you, Eric, and moving through really quickly, what is an application that hasn't been built today or that you've been thinking about that excites you? Where do you see the opportunities now, and where should we head?
I think that this idea of a half solicited customer request, if you will, is one that has that has legs. It's one that says, sure, I might get a customer that's specifically reaching out to me, but I might actually have one that the customer is expressing a need in the community. I just happen to have something that will look at it, right? And it looks at it every hour, every day, whatever. They are requesting something, meaning that they have a need. They're not requesting it from us, but we are able to answer it, right? And so I think that that's a really interesting concept. And this really makes it so that we can both help a community better that way. Sometimes you might say this particular space, this particular question that the customer is asking about probably should be routed to this SME in the company, right? But it might also be something that just more in general, right, helps you be more responsive to your customer and say, in fact, you're asking about something that we've got an offering for, right? So you can actually turn a question into an opportunity for yourself and answer the customer's question more aptly.
All right, well, very good. Well, it is time for us to start bringing this session to a close. I want to thank David Jeunesse for once again being a great co-host and bringing a great team from Salient Process to us to talk about a fantastic application and some great discussion about what is possible today. So with that, thank you, David. Thank you, the team at Salient, for being with us today. I'd like to turn it back over to Teresa to help us close out the event. Teresa?
Well, thank you. And just want to thank everybody for their time today. Just a reminder that check out the resources. There's a PDF of the slides in there. So you have access to all of the links and that added information that's in there. Lots of cool stuff. Please take my feedback survey. I always want your feedback and opinions. Lots of other cool stuff coming up at AIM in the coming weeks, and there's always more webinars around the corner. Kevin's podcast, drops regular episodes. Lots of learning available to you at AIM. But just as we bring this to a close, I just want to hit back over in representing Salient Process. I just want to ask for a closing thought or a key takeaway. So will one of you raise your hand and give a closing thought on behalf of Salient?
Yeah, well, I can jump in on that. I would think that a lot of times there are a tremendous amount of use cases that I was seeing in the chat that are that can be used for RPA. And one of the greatest benefits, I think, of RPA is it's a solution that can be scaled to an enterprise level, but it's also a solution that can be an entry level. And so it's really available to the masses, from the smaller entities out there that just need a little bit of automation. RPA is a fantastic tool, and that can go up to your Fortune 10 companies that can really scale.
Thank you, John. David Jeunesse from IBM, your closing thoughts today.
Well, I want to tell the audience how much I enjoyed this hackathon and seeing the creativity of our community. And I would like to announce that we are planning, this isn't an official announcement, it's unofficial, we're planning another one. Another Build About contest with more prizes. And so stay tuned, it'll happen somewhere towards the end of this year. Or at least in the fourth quarter. So there's a secret preview of something exciting to come, because this is really, really cool stuff.
Well, thank you. And on behalf of my esteemed, very large panel of folks with us today, thank you very much for your time. I'm Teresa Resick from AIM, and we will see you with our next event. And have a great afternoon.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.